Project Mercury was a national manned spaceflight project that began October 7, 1958. The project lasted about 4.5 years, and during this time, a lot was learned about man's capabilities in the space environment along with his capabilities in Earthbound activities. It was not long until the testing began to find the men qualified to journey into space. Due to the small space available in the Mercury spacecraft, candidates could not be taller than 5'11 and no heavier than 180 pounds. The man also had to be under 40 years old, have received a bachelor's degree or the equivalent to that, have experienced 1,500 hours of flying time, and have to be qualified to fly jets. 110 men were found to meet these first minimum requirements. However, it was not long before these 110 men dwindled down to just 32 candidates. With 32 candidates, individually, each man arrived at Albuquerque to continue testing. This time, it was to undergo about a week of medical evaluations. In this phase, over 30 different lab tests collected chemical and cardiographic data. X-ray examinations thoroughly mapped each man's body. Doctors learned almost everything about each candidate's eyes, ears, nose, and throat. These men probably had more complete medical histories than had ever before been attempted on any human beings. They underwent elaborate sets of environmental studies, physical endurance tests, and psychiatric studies conducted at the Aeromedical Laboratory. During March of 1959, each of the subjects experienced a wide range of stressful conditions. Not only were there pressure suit, acceleration, vibration, heat, and loud noise tests, but each candidate had to prove his physical endurance on treadmills and tilt tables, or by putting his feet in ice water and by blowing up balloons until exhausted. Although they originally wanted a magic number of 6, after seeing the talents of the candidates, 7 men were selected. Each man was a superb physical specimen, with an IQ higher than 130 and the ability to function well both as part of the team and on his own. First, from the United States Marine Corps, Lieutenant Colonel John Herschel Glenn Jr. From the Navy, Lieutenant Commander Walter Marty Schera Jr., Lieutenant Commander Alan Bartlett Shepard, and Lieutenant Malcolm Scott Carpenter. And finally, from the Air Force, Captain Donald Kent Slayton, Captain Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr., and Captain Virgil I. Grissom. On April 9, 1959, a press conference was held in Washington. Thomas Keith Glennon, the first administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, introduced the public to the 7 men chosen to be the nominees for the first human voyage into space. They were to be called astronauts, after the pioneers of ballooning, who had been called argonauts. The personable pilots were introduced in civilian dress as a contingent of mature Americans, average in build and vision, all family men, college-educated as engineers, possessing excellent health and professionally committed to flying advanced aircrafts. The names of Carpenter, Cooper, Glenn, Grissom, Schera, Shepard, and Slayton were perhaps to become as familiar in American history as those of any actor, soldier, or athlete. The fame of the astronauts quickly grew beyond all proportions to their current activities and their pre-flight mission assignments, despite wishes of NASA administration. The third astronaut to fly in Project Mercury, John Glenn, went on to do great things within the space program. Glenn was born in Cambridge, Ohio, on July 18, 1921. Prior to his first flight, Glenn had served as a backup pilot for astronauts Shepard and Grissom. When astronauts were given special assignments to ensure pilot input into the design and development of the spacecraft, Glenn specialized in cockpit layout and control functioning, including some of the early designs for the Apollo project. Glenn was also assigned to the NASA Space Task Group at Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia in April of 1959, after his selection as a Project Mercury astronaut. On February 20, 1961, Glenn piloted the Mercury Atlas 6, Friendship 7 spacecraft on the first manned orbital mission of the United States. Friendship 7 launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida Launch Complex 14. During his flight, Glenn completed a successful 3-orbit mission around the Earth, reaching a maximum altitude of approximately 162 statute miles and an orbital velocity of approximately 17,500 miles per hour. The mission duration from launch to impact was 4 hours, 55 minutes, and 23 seconds. Glenn became the first American to orbit Earth on this mission. Glenn resigned from the Manned Spacecraft Center on January 16, 1964. He re-entered space on the STS-95, a 9-day mission from October 29 to November 6 of 1988. During this time, the crew supported a variety of payloads, including the deployment of the Spartan Solar Observing Spacecraft, the Hubble Space Telescope Orbital System Test Platform, and the investigations on spaceflight and the aging process. This mission was accomplished in 134 orbits of Earth for a total travel distance of 3.6 million miles and 213 hours and 44 minutes. In total, Glenn had logged over 218 hours in space. John Glenn has since received the Navy's Astronaut Wings, the Marine Corps' Astronaut Medal, the NASA Distinguished Service Medal, and the Congressional Space Medal of Honor. On March 1st, 1999, NASA renamed its Cleveland Center the John H. Glenn Research Center at Lewis Field in his honor. Most recently, John Glenn received the Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama on May 29, 2012. NASA learned a lot from Project Mercury. The agency learned how to put astronauts in orbit around Earth. It learned how people could live and work in space. It learned how to operate a spacecraft in orbit. The astronauts of Project Mercury were painted as American heroes fighting communism with their space missions. The 7 men of Project Mercury and their families instantly became worldwide celebrities. Although the PR was part of the United States' failed plan to put a man into space before the Soviet Union did, it was successful in providing a technological basis for the more challenging orbital missions later on.